So within the realm of aquarium keeping, specifically the reef tank, there appears to be this trend to lean towards a ecosystem, natural filter system, or using some natural means of trying to control the environment or resolve certain problems. And within that coral reef aspect of the aquarium hobby is the biggest frustration of all reef keepers, that being algae. What causes it? Let's just say stuff in the water that either comes in with the water or comes in with the supplements or generally comes in with the food. Regardless of what it is, it doesn't take much to encourage it. And again, I've said this before, for all intent and purposes, you've got a box of water that you're pounding a whole bunch of light into, and you're pouring in different nutrients, basically creating an organic stew. So there's a chemical way of trying to get rid of the things that might cause the fertility of the water. Lanthanum being one of them, but I'm just now hearing about, and that's a chemical means. And for the moment, we won't discuss that, maybe some other time. In this particular episode, what I do want to talk about is algae filters. About 20 years ago, the rage in the reef keeping hobby was called the algal turf scrubber by Dr. Walter 80. He's the guy who did Biosphere over in Arizona. He's also developed, which was at the Smithsonian Institute, the algal turf scrubbing system. And without going really into it, and if you do want to, go buy the book Dynamic Aquaria by Walter 80. But without going heavy into it, suffice it to say, what we're trying to do is use plants to absorb or compete with the algae in the tank for those same nutrients that the algae are feeding on. Keeping in mind that there are 3 magical legs to the growth of any plant: light, water, and nutrients. If you eliminate one of those, the stool or the 3 legs can't stand. Well, in an aquarium, you have to have water, and in a coral reef tank, you have to have light. So the only other thing to try to control, the 3rd leg being the nutrients. In this particular case, what we're trying to do is compete for those nutrients with some other type of plant. In this case, possibly an algae. Years back, we used to use what was called caulerpa, or a macroalgae, but apparently there seems to be some issues not only getting, but the legality of owning caulerpa these days, for fear that it's going to overtake the Pacific Ocean, such as it has in the Mediterranean, but again, that's a whole nother story. In this case, or today's times, I think it's what's called Chaeto, and I believe that's relatively easy to get a hold of. If you can't find some place to buy it, I'm sure somebody in an aquarium society needs to harvest theirs and could quite possibly contribute some of theirs to you. But you use this algae, and you don't just dump it in the tank. You have to create another tank, another aspect of your filter system, let's just say another reservoir. And to be smart about that, that reservoir needs to have its water source pumped up to it, and then, like your tank, via some kind of an overflow, gravity flow right on back down to the filter or the area that the pump drew the water from. In this particular case, you saw we're working on a little wooden stand, and we've got ourselves a little Rubbermaid tub here. And what we've done is drilled 2 holes in there, one at the top and one at the bottom. The one at the bottom being a 1-inch bulkhead, and this other one here will be a 3/4-inch bulkhead. And before I go too far, I better make sure I didn't lose the gasket. There it is right there. So anyhow, we've drilled 2 holes in the bottom. We're going to put these bulkheads in place, and I better grab this gasket before I lose it, because a bulkhead won't seal without its gasket. We'll slip that gasket right onto the bulkhead now. Slide that through. And so essentially, these bulkheads will serve as the water passage through the bottom of the tank. We're going to need a couple more pieces of fittings. And what we'll do is we'll put a threaded fitting in here that'll allow us to incorporate a standpipe. The standpipe will determine the water level inside there. And at the same time, it'll also be where the water comes in at. This will sit on top of that wooden stand, and we'll end up putting a light over the top of this, and we're going to grow algae inside here. So this becomes our algae filter, which will hopefully suck up whatever nutrients are in the water that the hair algae or the bad algae is feeding on. So let's get this stand painted, and I'm going to take you to the customer's application and show you the actual application.
Because the return line as well as the drain exits through the bottom of the algae filter, we've had to drill holes in the top of the stand that the algae filter is going to sit on top of so that the water or plumbing can pass through. So with those holes drilled, we're now going to paint the stand. This will help seal the wood and give it kind of a clean laboratory look.
So while the one side of that wooden stand is drying, let me show you a little bit more about the actual Rubbermaid tub / algae filter. As I mentioned, I drilled 2 holes in the bottom and I put 2 bulkheads in there. One is a 1-inch bulkhead, the other one's a 1/2-inch bulkhead. Here's where I'll attach a drain line, and here's where I'll attach a line coming from the water pump out of the customer's reservoir. Inside the tub, I placed a couple of threaded adapters. Basically, it just allows me to take the stand pipes, these pieces of pipe, and slip into those adapters. So as you can see there, they're stand pipes because the pipe stands up. Now this one will be pumping from below. This will be the input line. This is the 1/2-inch line. So water's going to pump from his reservoir via the pump up this pipe and billow here into this tub. Here, the water has to fill up to the top of this standpipe for it to exit. And so this is what determines the water level. Both of them I cut at 9 inches. I think the whole tub is probably about 11 inches tall. And you can see right there, they're shorter than the top. And so this will allow me to create a reservoir on top of that wooden stand to the side of the aquarium. And inside here, because there's going to be 9 inches of water, I'll have this algae growing in here. And on top of it, I'm going to put a big strong light to encourage the growth of that algae, the chaeto, or whatever algae I decide to end up putting in there. And again, I'll just attach a drain line to this that'll go right back down to his reservoir. And then I'll put a barb fitting on here, and this is where the water from the water pump or the supply pump will come in.
So with just a little bit more white paint giving it that clean laboratory look that I'm striving for, we'll go ahead and do a mock setup of the algae filter. In other words, the tank with its drain lines sitting on top of its stand. So make it a point to come on back for part 2 as I take you up to the customer's house, show you the algae problem in the tank, and how we're going to install this particular algae filter on their system.